All right, let's begin. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this training session on the NIST Cyber Framework by QuickStart. This is your host, Idisham Hussain. I'm with William Matthey. William has over 30 years of experience working with the Department of Defense and the US government. He has more than 35 years of experience in cybersecurity consultation as well as training. Um and with such a vast experience, I cannot summarize it in a minute, and unfortunately I only have just 1 minute to take from this. So I'll just remove myself from between you guys, the learners, and William, and I'll take let William take the show from here. uh, so please begin, William.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're at. Um, we're going to cover some of the changes going on. I have outlined some of the topics, 837 Rev 2, which is RMF 2.0. Some of the changes in NIST, 800-181, which is the NICE initiatives for job roles, which will be reflected across all the federal workspace and everywhere else eventually. 800-53 Rev 5, which is finished, but not adopted by anybody because they're still working on 53A Rev 5, and you have to have them as a pair. The little note at the bottom, what we're going to cover in a month, we're going to hit more of the 800-181 as it relates to the DoD 8140 changes, the future of training for the government, especially DoD. All right, a little piece. This is actually an outtake about me from the master classes, the cyber crimes road shows that I do across Europe with a young guy called Andy Malone. Some number of you may have been in my classes, CISSP or RMF or other things that I have trained forever. May or may not have run across Andy. This is actually his piece he puts up on the Cyber Crimes Roadshow site. What we're going to look at today, briefly, looking at change. Like I said, I've been doing this forever. The one thing that happens with all things security is nothing stays the same. When I started doing the first course that I wrote for CIOG 6 out of Fort Gordon for RMF about 7 years ago, everybody was getting geared up to change into RMF, and within a year or so, everybody was kind of holding back. They're going, well, maybe we won't do that. We've got this new thing, the Cyber Framework. Cybersecurity is going to replace this, and like all things security, everybody wants to wait and see what's really going to happen. DoD drug their feet. There was a drop dead date set in 2014 for getting all this done in 180 days. That didn't so much happen. And everybody waited and waited and waited because they thought that the cybersecurity framework would supplant all of RMF, and there's no reason to do RMF if you're going to just have to do something different. What has now happened is we're now on the 5th anniversary of the cyber framework, and it has been incorporated into and become a part of 800-37, the risk management framework. So RMF is RMF 2.0 is 837 Rev 2, which incorporates all the changes that have come about because of the cybersecurity framework. When you drill down into that, look at what that's going to mean for changes in training, job roles across the federal workspace, changes at NIST. Some of the changes that's driven are reflected in 853 Rev 5. It has over the years evolved in the different revisions. for the last 6 or 8 years, it has been 17 control classes in families in 3 classes. It's really 18. Program management was kind of often in appendices. All of the privacy controls have shown up. They were in an appendix as well. And now with the new changes in Rev 5, we're going to have 20 families to incorporate the changes brought about by Cyber Framework and a lot of the new privacy requirements. I'm going to start out looking at 37 Rev 2, little brief discussion, a look at the requirements. I think I'm going to wait. By the way, I do see the things pop up in chat as people ask questions. I'm going to wait till the end and kind of address all of those. I'm going to go down through them as we have time at the end. There will be a share available. I don't know that the slides are in it. I can push off.
Yeah. We'll share the presentation as well as the recorded version of this.
Okay.
Session.
That's fine.
Everyone who signed up.
We're going to hit 37 Rev 2, look at the framework as far as how the Cyber Framework has amended 837 Rev 2, created RMF 2.0. The NIST guidance, including the job roles and training requirements, as spelled out in 800-181. We'll really drill down into that topic more. Lesson 3 is kind of a preview of what we're going to get into next month in some detail. The evolution of controls because of 37 Rev 2 and the Cyber Framework is what we're going to cover in the 4th part of this morning. What you see in Rev 2 is the ongoing, continuing changes for DoD. It's not going away. You can't avoid it. It is a requirement, and DoD has, I think, finally resolved themselves to that. It's a huge amount of change, and there was not enough budget or time originally allocated for it. That's getting better. It continues to change. This is October of 2018. It is still a joint task force, activity. The big thing that is changing across all the NIST documents is, an interoperability between the federal workspace and the enterprise. So I don't know whether the DoD is adopting the enterprise best practices or the enterprises are adopting federal best practices, but everybody is beginning to get on the same common ground as far as what is adequate security. That's a definition that comes out of OMB A130. It's really the guidance for 837 Rev 2 is providing adequate security for your organization. The Cybersecurity Framework, which everybody wants to say is new. I teach 15, 18 RMF classes a year for the last 6 or 8 years. I did the DICAP migration from DITSCAP in Europe for about 4 or 5 years back in the 2000s, early teens. Began writing the course and doing the instruction for 837 Rev 1 6 or 8 years ago. And now we have evolved to 837 Rev 2 to incorporate the Cybersecurity Framework. And it's not new. Everybody says, oh, it's the new stuff, Cybersecurity Framework. Not new. If this was one of your kids, they'd be dressing themselves and feeding themselves, going off to preschool. RMF, is fixing to start driving. These are not new. Most of the federal workspace has evolved into RMF. The only parts of it that are dragging behind some of the overseas components, a lot of DoD. You know, it's a huge change. It requires a lot of planning and commitment from the folks at the top, and some of that hasn't happened. People at the bottom are being tasked with doing it without any support or understanding of what it is they actually are expected to do. So it's been an ongoing struggle for people working with RMF, and I see it every week as I see rooms full of people trying to deal with it. Cybersecurity Framework is a push. The big change that comes with rolling this into RMF 2.0, the adoption of Rev 2, is the addition of one additional step to the RMF. It's actually a step that I've had in everything that I've done for the last however many years. We've always had a step 0, a planning step, a prepare step, to try and get the organization in a position to take advantage of all of what they need to do and move through 37 Rev 1 and now Rev 2. NIST has formalized that. They've actually created that planning step as an additional step with Rev 2. So maybe they were paying attention. I don't know. The history of this, again, not new, gone on for a long time. Rev 2 itself, the Cyber Framework part started way back like 2014 as an act. Most of this comes out of OMBA 130 and originally from US Code. So the history of it has brought it forward from 2015, 2016. Like I said, now 5 years old. The idea being that rolling it into RMF, into the Risk Management Framework, helps formalize the adoption of it as a component of, rather than a replacement for, Risk Management Framework. You're going to see more and more of the interoperation of the two. The components of the Cybersecurity Framework are an integral part of the Risk Management Framework. They are both part of an SDLC approach to security. You need a development lifecycle approach to be sure that everything is done in a systematic, consistent, organized manner. The idea being to continually work on improving, the organization's security. Not a new concept. The European concepts that you get from things like ITIL and the security libraries from a lot of the different countries all, address these same concepts over and over and over pretty consistently. The 5 steps of the Cyber Framework: identify, protect, detect, and respond. The idea being now to not only try to protect and defend yourself from attacks, the realization that you are going to get attacked. You will be attacked, and more often, those attacks are successful to some extent. They're a nuisance or they're catastrophic, and they're examples of both in government and out. You can identify your vulnerabilities, establish controls to protect yourself, establish controls to detect what's going on in your environment, but you need to develop the abilities to respond to events, to respond to attacks, to limit the damage done, and to become resilient, the ability to recover when you are attacked. I was at the Department of State a long time ago, 10, 12 years ago, working for Department of State, and attended a federal briefing in DC, about 200-300 security people, 400 security people, and the opening speaker was a guy named Vivek Kundra, who was the DoD CIO, federal CIO. Not sure they had a DoD CIO at the time. And his opening statement was that there's only two types of people operating information systems in the world today: people who have been breached and people who are about to be breached. And that created quite a disturbance and quite a stir, and everybody was, trying to figure out which group they belonged to. But it was a good start for the meeting. And a year or two later, at the same conference, new federal CIO, because Kundra was smart, he left, and I think went to work at Berkeley or somewhere. But the new federal CIO got up in front of the same group, and his message had subtly changed. His message was, there are only two types of people operating information systems in the world today: people who have been breached and people who know they've been breached. And that's a significant change. It really created a disturbance in the group. It was just before the breach for all the federal personnel. It breached all of the cleared folks across the federal workspace. Everybody was going, oh, well, surely he doesn't mean us. We haven't been breached. And in truth, almost everyone has suffered some sort of a breach, an event, and a lot of people are unaware of it. Even more people have no adequate response in place to deal with a breach, and systems are not resilient in their ability to recover from being breached. Those are the functions that are the highlight and the strength that the cyber framework brings to RMF. The risk management framework was kind of front-end loaded at the time it was initiated. This is about the ongoing maintenance and management of security across an enterprise, beyond just business continuity, beyond basic incident response, building depth in your ability to detect, respond, and recover to any sort of an event or an incident that compromises your systems. All the things you need to look for in building this out. The cyber attack lifecycle. It includes the Internet of Things. Several of the recent attacks, denial of service and otherwise, enterprise and government, have used Internet of Things activities to breach otherwise very secure environments. The Target breach years ago was the related connectivity of someone's HVAC systems to their operational environment that allowed people to violate all of that and end up with everybody's information from Target. Good metrics, measuring cybersecurity, beginning to develop an understanding of what questions to ask in order to get answers relevant to the cybersecurity needs of whatever your unique organizational requirements are. Referencing techniques, secure software development. That has been one of the things preached and worked on for at least the 13 years that I've been a CISSP, is secure software development. Organizations like OWASP and others have made a lot of improvements. Big organizations, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, all promoting, secure software development. You don't throw it out the door and chase it with a service pack trying to fix it. You try and make sure that everything created and developed and deployed is secure by default, secure by design. Getting better, not sure it doesn't have quite a ways to go. Small business awareness and resources. This is, security for the enterprise, security for organizations is really everybody's business. And it's not only everybody within the organization, the agency, the enterprise, it's all the people with which you have any sort of a relationship. You get products, you get services, you get system support from a variety of organizations, large and small. And those organizations have to have a security awareness that allows them to securely interact and interoperate with your environment and protect your environment and their own, appropriately. One of the biggest ones, harped on a lot, really the key to making any of this work, is governance. This is an enterprise risk management solution. The Cybersecurity Framework, Risk Management Framework, all absolutely dependent upon support from the top. Again, 15 years, give or take, of training CISSPs, CISA folks, information assurance folks, everybody. What you hear any place you walk into a room, whether you're having a security activity or event, is the people at the top don't understand. The people at the top don't care. The people at the top don't support us. There is no policy. There is no procedure, from the top. Without it, without a top-down, supported activity, none of this works. You lack the resources, you lack the commitment, you lack the personnel to make any of this actually function, for any length of time in an enterprise. They give it some a brief discussion, say, yeah, we should look at that. We need to look at that risk management stuff. That's interesting. But no, they are none of the resources put in place to engage all of these activities over time, to the extent that any organization has to do it, to make changes in their governance, changes in their risk management. Most places have never done a risk assessment. And they're really interested in risk management. We've got to get that done. That's important. But they've actually never done a risk assessment. I don't know how many places I go into that's a huge problem. And that reflects a lack of governance, a lack of understanding at the top of the organization of what's involved. The three topics that kind of get renamed in this process when we move from Rev 1 to Rev 2. There are some definition enhancements and a couple of name changes. Authentication gets renamed to Identity and Access Management. Actually covers a broader range of topics: identity proofing, identity management, a lot of the automation and utilities necessary for doing that, a lot better controls, a lot more requirements. Technical privacy standards. This is a huge change brought about by the Cyber Framework. Turned it into privacy engineering. The idea of taking advantage of privacy. The US has almost no privacy standards compared to Europe and other places. We're just now beginning to, encompass some of the privacy requirements. You have to opt into privacy here instead of opting out, which is the case in Europe. There are more reports, there is better understanding, but pretty much everything about you these days is for sale. So privacy still has a ways to go. Starting with federal systems, conformance assessment, renamed to confidence mechanisms. Again, digital, automated types of systems to provide assurance. This is your big data using automated, information management type systems, data mining to help you achieve better security across an enterprise. RMF, the RMF certification, there is the CAP exam. It is still, basically an RMF exam. There are 8 domains in the CAP exam. No, excuse me, 7, because they didn't add actually planning as a domain. But it covers RMF 2.0. The domains from ISC squared are the 7, which pretty much are straight up the 6 steps of the RMF and the risk management framework, which is domain 1. So you can be actually certified in RMF. The CAP certification pretty thoroughly covers it, and it has evolved in the last few months to cover the changes as far as Rev 2, and continues to, as all ISC squared exams do. The domains change pretty much in real time. One of the big changes driven by the Cybersecurity Framework, 837 Rev 2, is the ongoing, continuing change in a need for people, workforce problems. I don't know what types of organizations you're all in, but every place you go, every person you talk to is looking for skills and abilities in people to handle the new requirements for risk management, cybersecurity framework, the reporting requirements, the assessment requirements, the management requirements. What are the requirements for an ISO? What are the requirements for an SSM? What are the requirements for an SSO? What are the requirements for any of the roles set out in RMF, be it Rev 1 or Rev 2? Finding qualified people or getting people qualified to meet those roles and requirements is a huge task. Most organizations, especially the governmental organizations, are priced out. of a lot of qualified people because demand has been so huge. The last time I looked, they needed 40,000 properly cleared, properly trained personnel to take positions across the federal workspace. You know, the workforce, you know, and this is not new. 800-181 has been around more than a year, continues to change, continues to get flushed out. The idea of training people into cybersecurity roles, the NIST NICE, N-I-C-E, which is National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education. That's what NICE stands for. It started out defining about 24 particular workforce job roles. It's now over 40. Again, they continue to kind of work it out. It grows into what, you know, the actual needs are for those people across the workspace. The ability to properly train people, have people competitively available to hire, to protect systems, services, processes in enterprises and federal workspaces. It is a huge initiative. It's going to, you know, hopefully train tens of thousands of people to move into the roles that are now open and unfilled across the federal workspace. You know, contractors, federal employees, enterprises of every sort, large and small, supporting security in the enterprise. If you have not looked at the NICE initiatives, you should go look again. Again, they change all the time. There's new ones, several in the last few months. 800-181 actually defines the training requirements for each of those job roles. The intelligence communities are the ones trying to put together the 800-181 training requirements, which, by the way, any of you who are familiar with ISACA, www.isaca.org, the CISM and CISA certifications, are familiar with task and knowledge statements. If you work with COBIT, COBIT 5, COBIT 2019, the COBIT functionality, ISACA, is about task and knowledge statements related to the different things you have to do to perform tasks in an enterprise. Basically helps you structure security, structure the roles. When you look at 800-181, the NIST publication, it breaks down the training, experience, and knowledge requirements for every role in terms of task and knowledge statements. So if you're familiar with COBIT or ISACA, you will be very comfortable and familiar with 800-181. Those are getting melded together with the NICE job roles into what is becoming the new training requirements for all of the federal workspace. DoD codifies theirs in 8140.01, which we're going to cover in about a month, I think, is our next event. 8140.01 is going to tell you what you need to do to train and have properly qualified personnel across the DoD workspace, and the rest of the federal government has their own methodologies. Different organizations will probably have to meet the same or similar requirements as well for competitively training and hiring personnel. Management has to be aware of the requirements for the people that they need to hire. Again, this is a top-down kind of problem. There needs to be some education for the folks at the top of organizations, as much or more than everybody else. What you see at a lot of meetings and a lot of organizational activities is you see a lot of the operational people. You don't see very many of the, enterprise, management structure, people from the top. The components in here, the NIST framework is intended to break these things out. There are 7 categories. They started out with not very many of the particular specialty areas, the job roles. They're now up to 36. Actually, I think they're over 40 now. I haven't looked in the last few days. These are more and more accurately reflected in what is now the DoD 8140 worksheet. 8570, which everybody's kind of hung their hat on forever, was supplanted by 8140 about 4 years ago and went away. But the 8570 worksheet survived because the 8140 stuff was not complete, was not adequate. The task and knowledge statements, as far as who needed what training and what jobs were to be filled, were not done in 8140 until about 6 months ago. The intelligence community, all the DoD departments, all the different federal organizations have pretty much gotten the NIST job roles and the training requirements put together in what is now the 8140 worksheet. There is no more 8570 worksheet. It went away. You don't have the current copy of the 8140 worksheet, you should look for it. Drop me a note, I'll send you a copy of it. If you can't find it. And it as well continues to change and evolve, as do these job roles. There are newer training requirements, newer best practices, newer job roles. I don't know where it's going to stop. Like I said, I think it's already over 40. It continues to change and evolve as organizations, are able to determine what their needs and requirements are. These are defined in work, again, in task and knowledge statements for every job role. Let you see what the experience needs to be for people, what the training requirements need to be for all the different people, all the skill areas, abilities. If you've not looked at 800-181, it's in the share available. There'll be a link on the last slide, I believe, that everybody can go and pull down a lot of these original documents. If you're going to be working this, you need to spend some serious time with it. The NIST framework, relationships, abilities, competence. How do you define who's doing it? You can't just promote people into these or set a lot of these roles as other duties as assigned. This is not the job that your basic tech can do, a lot of them. They'll require additional training, additional time, education, experience. Some of the different roles, the NIST framework categories. This is the basic categories for 800-181 and the NIST framework. When you begin to break them down, A233, A3, it now has 52 specific job roles. The A tables in NIST break these on down. the specific skills, the specific requirements, those have gotten moved into 800-181 and are now getting translated in the training requirements for every enterprise and every organization into specific training requirements. CISSP is still there at the top. RMF is there. CISA is there. There are cloud roles. Lots and lots of new certifications have come around in the last 6 months to meet a lot of these requirements. ITIL has completely changed. ITIL v4 is changing to address a lot of these requirements as well. Lots and lots of change. When you look at it, this is what you see for a role. By the way, your folks at Personnel Management, OPM, have actually assigned OPM numbers to each of these roles in the federal workspace. This will be somebody's MOS if you're in the government. If you're in a DoD role, your MOS is about to change. These are the task and knowledge statements related to a particular role. What skills, what abilities. This is one of, again, as many as 54 different specific roles that OPM has adopted in the federal workspace. When you look at things like 853 Rev 5, we talked earlier, Rev 5 was finished almost a year ago. Nobody can adopt it because it's a twin. Well, it's half of a twin. You've got to have 853A Rev 5 in order to be able to do the assessment and have the assessment criteria for each and every one of the controls in 53 Rev 5. So until 53A is finished, you really cannot adopt it. You have to have them both. When you look at the headings on all of these NIST documents, if you've got NIST documents, you need to continually go and look for the new ones. The same with DoD documents. When this stuff changes, I talked earlier about the fact that this is security, and security changes all the time. This is going to change in a world of hurry. CNSS 1253, 1254, the 8500s, 8500-01, 8510-01 will all change as soon as these things change. And they will change in a hurry. It's going to be a big difference, you know, in some areas, not a lot of change in others, but it will be something that everyone has to address in their organizations. The change in Rev 5, the big change is it rolls out a lot of the controls necessary to make your systems resilient, you know, enhance their ability to survive attacks, and recoverable, the ability to come back from any sort of an event. You want them to be durable, survivable. That's the goal. The privacy controls are also enhanced. You get 2 additional control families in Rev 5 because the privacy controls roll up out of the appendix into 2 additional control families. The idea to make all of this stuff more available, more intuitive for all the people working with it. Separate the selection process from the actual controls. All the issues, things to address. Eliminate the term information system. Replace it with just system, because it can be anything. Now you've got the Internet of Things, industrial processes, physical systems. This is now for everybody. We were looking at the heading back here. The one thing you notice in the headings on all the NIST documents, my little note about what's missing, the word federal went away. Security and privacy controls for information systems and organizations, no federal. That is a huge change. Whoa. This is now security best practices for everybody. The NIST guidance is a best practice for everybody. The fact that any of the NIST documents, 837 Rev 2, and otherwise are requirements in federal environments is because the federal organizations have opted to adopt that guidance. That's what 851001, 850001 do. Those are your op orders that basically say, this is the way we're going to do it. So you don't have a choice. Enterprises may have a choice. Most of the government organizations don't have a choice. Privacy is a big thing in here now. More and more, hopefully, it turns itself into some better privacy requirements for enterprises outside the federal workspace. Lots and lots of change relevant to the controls, control sets, and implementation in Rev 5. All right. Couple of minutes, almost 15 minutes for some control questions, change questions. Let me see if I can find anything over here.
So guys, you can use the chat section as well as the Q&A section.
Did what?
If you have any questions to ask.
Yeah, I've got the chat section open here. You know, the slides available. I am at prodigy.net, by the way. I was talking about having done this forever. If you have questions or comments or need anything, you can drop me a note, please. I do answer my email as a rule. I never answer my phone because I'm usually doing this, but I do answer my email. What's coming up, we're going to hit the 8140 directives. We're going to hit the 800-181 a little harder. I think changes will ultimately be across government and enterprise. Good question. Most of the federal workspace, with the exception of DoD, is already doing most of RMF. They've been at it for several years. I was at state, like I said, 10 or 11 years ago, when they were already beginning to move into what has now become RMF, and I'm sure they've made the change to RMF 2.0 by now. The DoD, is late to change. It's, it's a little harder to move. It's like pushing an elephant, but it will change. And as that happens, all of the enterprises in support of federal, entities will adopt these sorts of changes, and more it will trickle down into all the workspaces required to support everything else that's going on. Best practices are best practices for a reason. It keeps you out of trouble. Yeah, I think that everybody is going to find they suffer from a lack of security. You've got banking. You've got a lot of other places that take a beating already and do everything they can do to protect themselves. I've got friends in the medical organizations. There are legislative, incentives as well. HIPAA, SOX, the new European, the GDPR stuff. has encouraged a lot of change, even here in the U.S., because there are huge fines, penalties. At the end of the day, if you give away everybody's stuff, you can get sued for it. You know, people don't want you giving away their financial information, their personal information. The only person who did all of that and didn't really suffer the consequences was OPM, and we'll never know the extent to which that breach has cost us. So that's a bad thing. There are some documents that you really want to have available to you. Again, OMBA 130 is not a bad one. A lot of this documentation is more and more available, not only across the federal workspace, but to enterprises. More and more people, you know, are out on the internet. Cloud computing has taken off. More and more people are aware of their security requirements and what happens if they don't, you know, manage those properly. There is a link out here on this on my site. That's alphacygnus.com, hackweb1.zip. If you go there to that link and pull it down, it's got 853 Rev 5, it's got 181, it's got 37 Rev 2. If there's any others you can't find, try to find and can't, let me know. That 8140 worksheet that replaced the 8570 worksheet, anybody in DoD should have, and you need to keep checking it because it literally changes every day. Again, this is security, so the norm is change. It's just going to be changing. There's nothing you can do about it. All right, well, that's kind of what I had for the day. If there's anything else you can think of you have a question about, as far as training requirements, I spend a lot of time doing that. The training requirements for all of this show up in the 8140 workbook. Lots of new things going on there. Lots of new roles.
We have that coming up next month, right?
Yeah, next month we're going to hit more and more of that. Drill down into it a lot.
All right, everyone. So if you have any questions or anything later on, even you can reach out to us at marketing@quickstart.com. You can post your question at expertconnect.quickstart.com. It's a discussion forum for IT professionals, and we will be reaching out to you guys very soon with a recorded version of this training session as well as the PowerPoint presentation. Thank you, William. That was a wonderful session. And we will see everyone next month then.
All right.
Right.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.